Welcome back to another episode of the Strength and Speed Podcast, a special edition episode. We're covering, which should be the final portion of the Ultra-OCR Man commentary from Special Forces soldier to record-setting professional obstacle course racer, and I am joined once again by the man, Bobby Ross. Bobby, welcome back.
Hey, man, welcome to my podcast, the Strength and Speed Podcast, with my special guest, Evan Preparis, talking about the last session on his book.
Yeah.
Ultra-OCR Man from Special Forces soldier to record-setting professional obstacle course racer. Thanks for joining me, Evan.
No problem. Bobby's also been putting out some content. You just put out a YouTube video about Mortal Kombat. By this point, it'll probably be a couple of weeks ago, but it's good stuff. You're combining all the stuff I love. It's like nerdy pop culture, video games, action movies, and sharing some of your thoughts as a filmmaker. So it's awesome.
Thanks, man. The plan for that is at least one video a week from now on, because otherwise I'm planning on doing a lot of traveling coming up, and I've got to have some passive income. So if any of you want to, you should go check me out. You can find me on YouTube, and please subscribe to me, because until I get 100 subscribers, I can't tell you where to go. So go and subscribe to me so that I can get money from you somehow.
Yeah, those ads, yeah.
I need to figure out a way to get you to give me money.
Yeah, the video's awesome, though. It's super good. I really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to see what else you produce. And you even sprinkled a little bit of OCR references in there, which is always cool. So, yeah, go check it out.
I think by the time this comes out, I may have 2 short films up there. We'll see.
Oh, wow. Learned a fun fact today. It's not really, actually, it's not fun. But so the last time, you'll see why in a minute, right? So the last time we recorded, I was in a hotel room, right? And we had video, and it was super nice. I found out today that hotel burned to the ground last week. So I missed that.
No way! Holy shit, what?
Yeah, I missed that event by a couple days. So glad I got out of Texas. But yeah, I was watching video. Of it burn. You know, the video is a couple days old at this point, but I was watching video of it burn a couple hours ago, and like right along the path that I went running in and out of the hotel for my morning runs. So,
I think it's probably impossible to feel any worse for Texas right now.
Yeah.
Holy.
So yeah, it's been quite a week. It was that, and then the we're kind of on the tail end of the Ninja Warrior. I just announced about my American appearance on American Ninja Warrior, or appearance to go compete, rather. I haven't gone yet, but.
Do you know if you'll appear or not, based on whether or not you go compete?
No, you don't. I think you'll kind of get a feel once you're there. You know, based off one, how well you do, and two, they ask for more interviews and more information and stuff like that, is my understanding. So we'll see. Honestly, I'm just excited to go play on the course, to be honest with you. So, and again, if you need another plug, Bobby's the one who made my submission video. So, people are like, you got picked on the first try. It's like Bobby Ross, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, I feel like you should start charging a pretty penny for submission videos. So.
Well, I mean, the reason why yours was so good was because I literally shot video of you for 18 hours a day, like for over a week. Like, if it wasn't like spectacular, then I don't deserve to be doing this for a living anyway. So it better get you in. Yeah.
All right, so let's jump back into the book, which is going to tie into some of the Ninja Warrior stuff in a second, because we're starting off on Chapter 12. Chapter 12 is about Toughest Mudder. So while I'm doing this Ultra OCR Grand Slam, the self-created thing, CBS announces kind of like, as I'm announcing my plans, like, all right, we're going to start televising Toughest Mudders. And then I go and do the first one. I do well, top 10. And then they want to interview me for the other one. So now I have this like stupid self-created plan on the table that essentially, I don't want to say no one cares about, but like I'm the one who like really cares about it. And then there's like this great opportunity to appear on TV for CBS, and it's like, well, which one do you do, or do you try to do both? And if you know my personality, I'm all in all the time, right? So I was like, well, I'm going to do both, and I'm going to figure out how to make it work. And that's kind of what this chapter is about. It's kind of balancing, doing all the 24-hour races I can in a year, and then on top of that, just throwing in more 8-hour races into the mix. So
right. This actually makes me think about how are you more motivated, Evan? So I hear people say two different, completely opposite things about goals. One is that if you want to be more likely to do it, then you tell as many people as possible. But the other is not to tell anyone, because that activates that portion of your brain that says you've already done something. Which are you?
Interesting. I would say I'm the type of person who, once it gets within a year, then I start telling people. So if it's, I have plans for several years out that I typically keep to myself, because a lot of times they sound a little crazy because I haven't done the intermediary steps to get to that final step, right? So like, I knew I wanted to go into special forces when I was still in college, but I didn't tell people that because like I hadn't even become an officer yet. I hadn't graduated Ranger school yet. I hadn't even been on a deployment yet, so it's like, well, maybe you keep that information to yourself, but kind of always know it's there. And then as you, when you graduate Ranger school, go on your successful first deployment, and then you can start telling people. So, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think
that's always interesting to me, psychologically.
Yeah, there's definitely, the observer effect, the peer pressure, right? Like the appearance of like looking like a hypocrite. I mean, it's weighs heavily. I was actually doing some research about the Army's combatives program, right? They teach you how to fight, especially in combat situations. And the founder of the program, one of his sayings was, he's like, in certain situations, the fear of public humiliation is worse than death, right? And they leverage that in the Army because people don't want to look weak in front of their unit, or don't want to be, observed as weak or not, willing to push themselves.
Right. I see that for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, the CBS announced going to start televising the Ultra-OCR. And, I still think this is was a huge moment in ultra sports, right? Like, what other ultra sports are on mainstream television? There wasn't a sports channel, right? It was CBS, main CBS, right? The only one I can think of is Ironman. I can't think of another ultra sport that actually gets TV coverage. Obviously, it's not live because you can't do ultra coverage live because it would be incredibly boring, right?
So boring.
It'd be so terrible. So I was actually surprised they decided to film the 8-hour overnight. I was like, that doesn't seem like it's going to go well, but I thought they did a pretty good job. And I kept it interesting.
I definitely know that the guys who were paid to do that were really not excited about doing it, because that is tough and that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nightmare.
Find and shoot people.
It's a nightmare too, because right, I mean, it's not like a race where you're like, oh, well, I'll just go to the front of the race and we'll follow the lead crowd. Like, you're trying to find people while there's all other people on the course, right? So like,
Yes.
The person in second, there might be 50 people between the person in first and second, so like, it's not intuitive.
How do you know who's important and who you don't care about until you creep up on them and say, hey, do I care about you?
Exactly.
No, never mind.
Exactly.
So uncomfortable.
On the last couple of filmings, they started giving us like colored, chem light stuff, like essentially like a light up bracelet that we wore on our bib so they could kind of see you from a little ways off.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. But the problem is, there's no rule saying that other people can't do that. So some people, as part of their normal getup, have lights on them, so it could be confusing.
I guess in case you like pass out, that might be smart. Like, so people can find you if they're like, hey, like if your pit crew realizes you haven't checked in a while, maybe they can go look for you. And if you have like a glow stick on you, it might be easier to find you. Yeah, so that's part of the safety. You're supposed to have essentially like a tail light, so like a blinking light on your backside, and then you're supposed to have a headlamp up on front, right? So you essentially have dual lighting there. But some people take the flashing light and replace it with a glow stick. Some people, again, glow bracelets, and there's multiple flashing lights, right? Like the point is just to have a light there. So if you fall down, face down into the mud and are essentially blacked out, like there's still light shining up from your lifeless body. Like a dark.
Yeah. A TV opportunity is huge, right? Especially in obstacle course racing. But I still had my own goals, so I tried to do both, and which is not unlike what's going on right now, right? Like I have Ninja Warrior in a couple of weeks, and I have in my mind, I still have a lot of obstacle-specific work to do for that. But at the same time, I announced my Ultra-OCR Mill 21,000 feet charity event, a month ago. So that's already on the table. So I'm doing both. My training schedule has gotten a little bit ridiculous, but luckily it backs off after about another week because I go into taper mode and then I basically focus on Ninja Warrior after that.
OCR meal sounds like the worst thing you have ever come up with.
Oh, good. That's good. I start losing, I think we were talking about this last time, like I start losing perception of like what sounds hard anymore. So sometimes I'm like, maybe this is too easy. And then other times like, you'll hear more about this if you want to go back and listen to the Obstacle Running Adventures podcast. But you start digging into the medical research on what happens to your body at altitude. And it's some pretty scary stuff. You're like, maybe this is not a good idea, and the owner of, like the maker of the hypoxic generator was like, we recommend you do not do this. And I was like, thanks, guys. I was like, thanks. So
it sounds like the ultimate in just misery, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have the ability to kind of like change pace or like slow down or speed up or talk to people and, kind of get your mind off of something like OCR America. But for something like OCR Meal, like this, like you can't even can you even speak with that on, like audibly, perceptibly?
Yeah, you can speak. It's not going to be very clear, and that's kind of one of the reasons I've only doing 6 hours, just because like eating becomes a pain in the butt, right? Because I either got to drink through a straw or I got to like take the mask off. So,
got it.
But yeah,
that's an aside. But yeah, that sounds horrible.
Yeah, go back and listen to Obstacle Running Adventures coverage of the event, and we'll probably do a post-race coverage of it on Strength and Speed too. So we'll get some more details out to you. And then, of course, Bobby Ross, I believe, is going to film some good content for that. So you might.
Yeah, I'll give you guys a little sneak peek. That'll probably be out by the time you listen to this.
Yeah, so go back and watch. Yeah, so Toughest Mudder, super cool. Cool to appear on TV. Again, I think if you lined me up in high school and said one of you was going to be on TV for being an athlete, I would have been like, well, again, definitely not me, So that was pretty wild. And in the book, I have a picture of my daughter kind of pointing at the TV because you can see me on TV. What was funny is my daughter has seen, she's seen Amy Padgett on TV, Brenna Calvert multiple times, and Michelle Warnke, right? Like, I was like, at some point, she'll realize that seeing your friends, your dad and his friends on TV is not normal, right? Because she thinks that's normal right now. That's just like, oh, that's just what happens, right? But yeah, because one of my friends was like, well, when you told your kids, were they so excited? And I was like, yeah, my daughter was like, cool, Dada, that sounds fun. Like not a big deal because she's seen we've met other people that have been on the show, so.
Yeah, whatever. Call me when you do something important, Dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Something significant.
Toughest Mudder was good, and I poured my heart out trying to do really well at those races, and sometimes it goes well, sometimes not so much. But
absolutely. Actually, at this point, I'm feeling dead air.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what to say to that.
Okay. Cool. Anything else on this chapter? Otherwise, I'm gonna keep on cruising.
Dude, this one is just you talking about with Ryan. I lost his last name. Ryan Atkins.
Yeah.
I was thinking Atkinson. Like it's really funny how you talk about people saying your name and like recognizing you as you pass them, as you go by, and the fact that everybody said his name, but you were fired up by that. Do you think that there's a part of you that said, "Hey, the closer I am to this athlete, the closer I am to victory"? Like what was going through your mind as people were saying his name and yet you were still fired up by that?
Yeah, so he was a lap ahead of me, but we were running at the same pace for a little bit. I was just happy to know that sometimes, you look at the performance of two athletes over a certain distance and it's like, wow, they were just light years ahead of me. And then, so you imagine them moving at this ridiculous speed, but it was cool to run with him for a little and like not be into deep into my lactic threshold, like I still felt like I was running aerobically.
Yeah.
He was just moving really, very efficiently, and not wasting time in the pit and, not wasting time at obstacles and just kind of flowing. It was cool. And it was kind of fun to run with him for a little bit. And like I said, hearing everyone else kind of call his name and be motivated to have him pass by was, it's a nice touch.
Is there anything to learn, to distill about the fact that you were running at the same pace basically as like the best in the world?
Yeah. I mean, the big difference is like that was only a portion of my race versus he was probably running at that pace the whole race, right?
Right.
But yeah, I think it showed me a little bit like, maybe, I mean, again, Ryan seems like inhuman sometimes. Like you look at some of the stuff he did and you're like, geez. I mean, it seems like operating on a completely different planet. It just kind of showed that, again, it's kind of about consistency and putting out, one, his training volumes are insane, which is the reason he can sustain paces like that for very, very long periods of time. So, he's worked himself up to that point.
This is like important in pretty much no matter what it is that you're doing in life. I've learned this recently. It's really not about being able to like surmount like these insane goals. Like, right. Like I think about this when it comes to video. It's not about the fact that you can stay up for 3 days straight on an edit, which does happen every once in a while, but it's more about the fact that the people who are doing the stuff that you want to do already are the sorts of people who have been plugging away at it in the dark at a really consistent pace for years.
Absolutely. So true.
Yeah, like if you want to be good at anything, whether it's like video or OCR, any sort of athletic pursuit, or just like you just want to make money in the world in general, like look for the people who have found a way to sustain a healthy pace at something day in and day out, who don't take days off. And those are the sorts of people who you need to like distill the essences of a successful life from, or successful habits from, I think.
Yeah, 100% agree. And you can see it even in the OCR industry. Like, there are athletes who, when I came in, were, crushing it, and then fast forward a year or two and they're gone. And then there's other athletes that arose like a year or two after I did, and they do great for a couple of years and then they're gone, right? Like, they're seizing on success and they're doing well for a little while, and then, whatever, they're losing interest or whatever the reason they decide to leave the sport. But there are other people who have been there, as long as I have and longer, right? I mean, especially on the female side of the Conquer the Gauntlet team, a lot of those girls have been crushing races since 2015 and sometimes earlier.
Yeah,
and this is also important for me to this, and in the last chapter I talk about, and so throughout the book I talk about some of the other athletes in the sport, because I definitely didn't want to make it seem like I am the only person in the sport per se. Like, I remember reading a review of Ultramarathon Man, Dean Karnazes' book, and people were like just ripping him apart, like, you're not even the best ultra runner, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, well, he never said he was the best ultra runner, right? Like, just telling his story. So, a part of me, I wanted to be like, well, I definitely want to give shout outs or, recognition to there's a ton of other great people in the sport and a ton of other great stories. We'll talk about this in the last chapter, but like, I'm hoping, like, my book is the first of other athletes sharing their stories and writing books about their personal journey in the sport of obstacle course racing. Because for me personally, that's what pulled me into the ultra running world, right? Like, yeah. I read Ultramarathon Man, I read Born to Run, and then I read, Scott Urich's book and Marshall Ulrich and Pam Reed. You basically name the ultra runner that has a book, and I just started churning through those, and that's kind of how I got pulled further into the sport. So I think obstacle course racing needs that. I think we need media that sticks around longer than podcasts and online articles, and I think books and movies are the ways that kind of has that staying power.
Yeah, I mean, like, how elitist is it to say that only the very best in any sport at any given time are allowed to tell their stories about the sport? That's dumb.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous. That imposter syndrome that people feel where they're like, oh, well, I'm not good enough, or like, I'm not the best, or like, I'm not even like top 5 or top 10 or whatever. I shouldn't be able to talk about it. No, like, I mean, like, part of what makes you memorable or part of what makes a sport powerful is not even necessarily the fact that people who are at the top of it also have the ability to write a good book or to give a good interview. No, like, I mean, like, most of the time they spend too much time training to even do that. The fact that like people at just like the top, like 20% or so, some of those people are able to give something. Heck, 50%, the top 50%. I'd be interested in seeing that. Or, like, I don't know, like that. I really dislike that elitism.
Yeah.
You can say something valuable even if you didn't beat Ryan Atkins. Even if you got 7th overall that year. You didn't even top 5.
No, not a Toughest Mudder. No. It's not in this book, but I wouldn't get onto the podium until 2019 for Toughest Mudder.
That's right. How old were you in 2019?
How old am I now? 38, 37, 36? Something like that?
Yeah, not 26, right?
No,
Yeah. You can do cool stuff after you graduate college.
you can. Actually, all of my cool stuff is after college.
Right. I didn't do anything cool in my 20s. Let's be real here.
All right, let's jump into the next chapter. So the next chapter was actually a chapter I added after, my initial plan was just do like one chapter per like big charity event I did. And then as I'm writing the book, right? So I started the book midway through the Ultra-OCR Grand Slam. I actually started tweaking and adjusting things, and this was one of the chapters that I added. I added the Toughest Mudder chapter was an addition. The Endure the Gauntlet lead up was an addition because, as I'm getting ready for this 48-hour Ultra OCR, things just, it was just such a good year. Like things just kept going well, and I kept winning or placing at races that I did not think I was expecting to do well at. I added that in there, and I also wanted to show that, I've got these big challenges going on every year, but there's, I'm still racing, every other weekend, right? It's not just like, all right, here's my one big challenge, and I'm not doing anything. I'm preparing just for this. I'm doing other races, and then this big challenge is kind of like a highlight of the year.
You said one of my favorite things. We talk about this all the time when we're just kind of like sitting around and goofing off. But like in the very first page, you say like, I find periods of suffering and challenges is what makes the relaxing moments that much better. Like you talk about the fact that like, if you just like kind of allow yourself to shrink into a place of comfort, then not only will you not do cool stuff, but you can't even like appreciate the comforts and like the good things in life.
Absolutely. It's like if you fly first class all the time, then it becomes like if you become numb to that feeling. Then when you go to like economy, you're like, what? They got me sitting in economy, right? Like people who always sit in economy and get upgraded to first class appreciate it, versus the person who always flies first class does not appreciate that they're in first class. So I fly economy, just so you know.
I do too, but I hate it. God, I hate flying so
well,
much.
You're tall too. I'm 5'6". It's not. I usually have plenty of leg room.
Oh yeah, like my knees always are pressed against the seat in front of me. So if I move it, whoever's in front, like if I move at all, whoever is in front of me always like turns around and gives me like a stink eye. Like I can't move, I can't speak, I can't say anything. Like I can see over their seat. It's horrendous. And also the window seat, I will do anything to get out of the window seat because it feels like I'm in a suitcase the whole time. This is neither here nor there, but
it's curved. I got you. Yeah, I love the window seat because you lean into it and fall asleep. Not a problem.
Hate it. I want to be on the aisle. It makes my posture better. I'll get up if you have to go to the bathroom. The problem is that flying sucks. That's all. There's nothing to that. You talk about never agains too. You did yet another never again when it came to the Dreadmill 48-hour challenge. That sucked.
Yeah, so I wanted to get ready for Endure the Gauntlet 48 hours, and so I saw this thing online, and they were like, all right, you do 100 miles on a treadmill over 48 hours. So I was like, oh, that seems like a good training prep for Endure the Gauntlet. So that's what I used it for. So I didn't officially compete on the weekend of the event. I just kind of logged it on my own and emailed the race director, and she sent me the buckle and stuff like that. But yeah, it was pretty bad. Just mind-numbing. I mean, it was just so painfully boring. And again, it reminded me what makes OCR America so hard, right? Like the first day wasn't too bad. I think I logged 40 miles. And then you go to bed and you wake up the next day and it's just like, oh, good, I get to run on the treadmill all day again. Because I was breaking it up. I tried to break it up so like my body could recover a little bit in between so I could get back to normal training that week. But yeah, it was mentally, it was rough. That was a rough one.
I love how you wrote a memoir and pretty much every single event in it starts off with the sentence, yeah, it was pretty bad. Like usually when people write a memoir, it's like about all the stuff that was pretty good.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite. This is the anti-memoir.
Yeah, it was. I make a lot of poor physical decisions and then ride them into the ground. So,
dude, Endure the Gauntlet was insane. That was actually the first time that I actually saw you. I didn't like meet you, but you ran by me because that year was my very first OCR race. Like that race was my first one.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was 2018. That was the big goal for the year. So getting ready for that. And, right before that, like literally right before that, and we're talking like 2 weeks before that, we raced North American OCR Championships, and we came in second in the pro co-ed, which again, short course is not my specialty, but it was rainy that day, and people were just falling off obstacles left and right. And the Conquer the Gauntlet team's not known for failing a lot of obstacles, so we pulled out second and beating names that are way faster than us, right? So
yeah,
that was really cool, and I didn't include the picture in the book, but it's on Facebook. I usually share it every year. It's like while I'm on the podium, I have this picture of like me reaching over and awkwardly touching Ryan Atkins' leg to show I'm actually on the podium with him. And I've got this like ridiculous face on, and Amy Pagic is dying in the pictures, like laughing so hard. And Ryan Atkins' dog is who's on the podium instead of Nicole Miracle. Ryan Atkins' dog is like mean mugging me, like he's about to bite me because I'm touching his owner. Such a good picture.
It looks like you're mouthing "daddy" in that photograph, but you're like holding on to his pants.
Yeah, it's hysterical. So the other funny part is, so the picture that's in the book, you can see like I'm kind of leaning a little bit against him because I'm numbing him to the effect of me touching him, right? It's very purposeful, right? So I'm leaning into him so there's physical contact, so that way when I touch him, he doesn't notice it as much. Yeah, it was a good one. Totally worth it. I don't regret that at all.
No.
Yeah, we were listening. Jumping. I'm going to jump backwards in time. Then we'll jump back and get right into the gauntlet.
This photo.
But I was getting I was getting ready for. I'm sorry. When I flew back from Lebanon for 2015 World's Toughest Mudder, I realized that we skipped over the story. So I'm in Lebanon working. So my plane ticket is a round trip from Lebanon to the United States to Las Vegas and back to Lebanon. So I fly back to the United States, do World's Toughest Mudder, and then I fly back to Lebanon because that's where I'm working, right? So as I'm flying back, I have essentially what looks like a one-way ticket to Lebanon from the United States. So I got stopped at every checkpoint, and they're like, "Why are you going to Lebanon?" Right? Because like the war in Syria is raging right across the border.
Yeah.
So it looks like I'm flying into Lebanon and not coming home, and like probably crossing the border, becoming a foreign fighter. So I got stopped in the United States. I showed my military ID card. That was a quick one. And then I got stopped in France too, and they were like, "What are you doing?" It's kind of a funny story.
You're just a hellraiser, man. You're a renegade.
Yeah, I thought I was going to join the Free Syrian Army there.
Well, the thing about it is, though, like if you were to think about anybody who was about to join the Free Syrian Army and you were to pick them out of a yearbook, it's the same as a person who would be on a podium or on national TV for being an athlete. I mean, you kind of don't look the part.
Yeah.
You're very unassuming until you take your shirt off.
That's weird.
I assume a lot.
All right. Whoa. It's getting real awkward in here. All right.
You want to lean against me on a podium a little bit?
All right. Let's jump into the gauntlet, right? So moving right along, I think I covered it pretty well in depth in the book, and I shared most of the stories that I can remember.
Summary, it was pretty bad.
It was awful. It was so much worse than, it was such a bad idea. I do like we were saying, I do all these things and I'm always like, that was a bad idea, or that was painful. And there's very few ideas that I've done where like in the middle of it, I'm like, this was a really bad idea. And like, I should give up on endurance sports. I should go find some other hobby. Endure the Gauntlet definitely pushed that button. I remember being like 18 hours in and being like, geez, what am I doing?
So. I think the most pathetic line in this entire chapter is when you say like, every time I grabbed a board or bar, my hand sent signals to my brain that screamed, "You're doing damage, let go." I continually overrode the signal by squeezing harder and grunting a little.
Yeah, that's how I do it.
That's all you got? Like all of this like badass special forces training, all of these 24-hour like insane. That's what it's distilled to. I squeezed a little harder and I grunted a little bit, and that's the only difference. That's the difference between you and me right now.
Yeah, just leaning into the pain.
That's right.
Otherwise,
That's what I do when I get out of bed. I grunt a little. Squeeze a little harder if I try to get my shoes off, like after a 4-mile run. Dang, dude.
we pulled so many ticks off my leg on like every lap. We were just like ticks. They was just ticks up and down my legs on every lap, which again probably is not good for you. It's not good for you, right? Carrying who knows what in them, but yeah, like
how about some off, man? Some DEET.
I don't. Yeah, I think someone sprayed me with. I usually don't use bug repellent. I think it's a complete sham. I think the whole industry is a complete sham. I'm just gonna be honest with you, right? Like,
hot take.
I've been camping. I used to go camping every month as a Boy Scout. I spent literally weeks at a time in the woods as in the military, and there was the guys who were like always covered in bug spray were like the bugs were always going nuts on them, and like I never wore bug spray, and typically the bugs didn't bother me too much. So
I don't wear it because it gives me a terrible rash.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would.
I'm convinced the bug spray industry like sprays something like a thing, for their sample for their test. They spray something with their bug spray, and then they have something else that has no bug spray. And as long as there's like one less bug on their bug spray, they're like, it's a win. It works. That's what I imagine.
Sometimes the placebo effect is all you need, man.
Yeah. I don't believe in it though, so the placebo effect for bug spray doesn't work on me.
How close did you get to blacking out in Endure the Gauntlet?
Very close. I mean, I talk about it in the book. When I came out, I was overheating so bad, and when I landed in those water obstacles. Like the blackness started creeping in, and I was like, "Oh, I'm about to go out. And then I like kind of take a couple of deep breaths, and then it kind of recedes, and you're like, "All right, I'm good for a couple more minutes." And
it was hot.
So hot.
It was hot out there.
And I knew at the time. Again, the story's in the book, but I knew when I went back out for another lap, at the point in the book that I'm talking about, I knew I can make it through the first half prime because it was like mostly in the shade, but the second half of the course, if you remember, was just like all in the sun. There was no shade, and I don't know what Phil and Steve were doing and Dave were doing that year, but like, I don't know if you remember, Crank It Up was so heavy. It was preposterously heavy.
It was insane, dude.
I
remember being fresh and going like, dude, like, I mean, like, I'm not a little dude. And that was a kind of a shock.
Yeah. And then Smooth Criminal is at the top of a hill, right? So like, you don't have a running start really. So you're going from like almost a standstill.
There were rocks everywhere too, man. Like, I mean, it was not like a stable ascent getting up there either. It was
a poor choice, of course. I still think that was the hardest Conquer the Gauntlet course I've ever done, period.
Oh, absolutely. It was fantastic. For me, that was the best, like, first race I could have ever done. Like, I mean, I crossed the finish line, like bloody, and just like I'd come with a group of, Victoria and my wife, had come with a group of friends, and we were the only two who crossed the finish line. And there was just like this feeling of like, oh, I can't wait to do that again. That felt amazing. Oh, yeah, there's this guy, Evan from Paris. Apparently he's been here for like an entire day, just doing this over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, so we won't go into too much detail, like I said, because I think I cover it really well in the book, because that's kind of like it's the big climax of the book there. So if you want all the juicy details, you have to pick up a copy.
Oh, man, you won't regret it. Some of the pictures, the people you have touched on the podium. It's phenomenal. That's what you do it for. All the touches. That's why you buy it.
Yeah.
Looks like David's touching you more in this chapter, though.
He is.
He's touchy. He's a touchy guy. The future, man. There are no victims. There are only volunteers.
Ooh, yeah. With Endure the Gauntlet kind of wrapped up, I'm still racing at this point, so I'm still doing other stuff, and there's still like ideas that I want to include in the book, and I'm trying to get it published at the time. So, I kept going back and tweaking this last chapter. At one point it ended right at Endure the Gauntlet, and then it was like, well, my team just won World's Toughest Mudder in the 2-man team category, right? So, like, that's pretty important, right? Like, it's the biggest win ever. So I should probably put that in the book. And then, it was, then, like, my next charity event was actually in the winter for the first time instead of the summer. So I was like, well, I'll just kind of slide that into the book too. And so OCR Mill, again, is briefly talked about in the book. I thought going through like another in-depth experience of like what I went through for another charity event was just kind of overwhelming at that point, and it'd be like, the reader would be like, got it. This guy does stupid things. He suffers a lot. He generally makes it pretty far and, finishes in some respect what he set out to do and has been raising money. So felt like I was kind of retelling the same story at that point with doing the 48-hour treadmill challenge, the 100 miles on a treadmill, and then doing OCR Mill. It seemed pretty similar, so I feel like it wasn't a whole lot of reason to like retell that in depth. But that was painful too. It's just the monotony, and then when every foot strike is exactly the same, right? Like it's hurting your muscles in the exact same way, so you don't get any natural variation you would like on normal terrain. And I grossly underestimated how badly that was going to tear me up. And I was hurting so bad towards the end.
I know we've talked about this, but I cannot imagine, like, running on a treadmill is to me like the worst thing. Like I'd kind of rather just like do that David Blaine thing, where he like takes a giant needle and like puts it all the way through his arm. So I would rather do that than 100 miles on a treadmill.
Yeah, not pleasant. Not pleasant at all.
And yet you keep doing it.
Yeah, I'm going to say I keep doing it.
You're about to do it again.
Yeah. I'm not going 100 miles. It's only 6 hours. That's like nothing.
We'll see. Watch on social media. Keep an eye on Evan's social and on his YouTube. And
well, you have to go back in time because this is coming out after.
That's right.
Go back and watch.
Go back and look at that. Look at a couple of posts back.
One of the kind of the craziest experiences of this whole OCR journey has been meeting Amin Dib from Hannibal Race and going to Lebanon and Kuwait for those two races. It was just completely insane, but it didn't fit well in like the storyline of the book. So again, it's something that had happened actually in the previous chapters, but I just kind of threw it here at the end just to share some more of that like personal experience and some of the other things that were going on in the background that didn't necessarily fit in with the storyline per se.
Yeah. There's so much, man.
Yes.
You've done a lot of suffering.
Yeah. So much suffering.
Hellish, even. What a hellish book. What an unpleasant life you've lived.
And that was one of the things, like, when I started, like I said, I've read a lot of other people's books and ultra runners' books and athletes' books. And, at some point you start reading books or you start reading military memoirs and you're reading someone else's book and you're like, I've done more than this guy. Like, I should write a book. Right? Like, that's what happened. Like, I kept reading books and I was like, what? Like, I've done much more harder things. I've done more interesting things. Like, I've been on more deployments. I've been, in more ridiculous situations overseas in combat and stuff like that. And I was like, why don't I just start sharing some of that stuff? So,
yeah.
You always hear about like the World War II veteran, your uncles or whatever, and they get later in life and they start passing, or their mind starts going, and there's no account of like anything they've done, right? Because they never took the time to write it down. Because by the time you're, later in age, whether you may not have the mental faculties to actually record it down. So I was like, well, I'm going to write this down. And honestly, if the only person who reads it is my family and my kids, I'm okay with that, right? Like, that's not going to bother me. So,
dude, that's something that's amazing, I think, about where we are with the internet and with social media, is that like there are lots more ways for you to be able to tell your story. And it's important that we're able to tell our stories, but not just tell them, but like remember them.
Yeah.
Like if you just have like letters that you sent to your sweetheart, like they did back in World War II, then if that shoebox gets burnt up, then they're over, then they're done, that's it. But you don't just have a book, you've got like a great chronicle of all this stuff, and the story is still being written too. That's the coolest thing about it.
Yeah. I'd say we almost have the opposite problem now, where because of the internet, everything gets recorded, right? So like, how do you sift through stuff that's relevant, right? Who has the time to sift through all this information to find, the important story that you actually want remembered? I think in the military we have the same problem, right? Like when we're collecting intelligence, right? Like we've gotten to the point where we have so many sensors, so much data that it almost becomes overwhelming. And it's like, well, what do I pay attention to? What do I ignore? and what do I actually use to make a decision?
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, like, the great thing about it is, since it is there, it's going to matter. And it's important, like we said, like we talked about earlier, like whether you got the podium or not, like these sorts of stories, like, will help somebody somewhere, will inspire someone, and have already, and taking the time and care. It may seem narcissistic in the moment to write a book about yourself, but like this sort of stuff has like inspired me over and over again, you know?
Yeah, that's been cool. Like, you know, seeing you run your first marathon and stuff like that, it's cool to like be able to like see that like a direct effect versus, you know, a lot of the articles I push out online, it's just like, oh, somebody probably enjoyed that article someplace, but no, they haven't told me about it, so I guess it's happening. I don't know. But, and yeah, you said that, like it does feel like, a little narcissistic to write a book about yourself. So part of that was just why, you know, when I printed the hard copies, I was like, all right, well, I'll just donate all the profits to charity, right? So essentially, I don't make any money off the hard copy sales of the book.
Right.
Yeah.
So buy the book.
Buy the book, yeah.
I mean, that's like the whole reason we did all of this from the very beginning. If you've been listening along this entire time, listening to us ramble, listening to all of our asides, listening to me like randomly interrupt Evan, like probably once every 5 to 6 minutes, then the whole reason we're doing all of this is for you to have this experience yourself and buy Ultra-OCR, man.
It's true. Yeah. You mentioned it at the beginning of the chapter, right? Like I put a quote at the beginning of each chapter, something that I enjoy and I think kind of sums up the meaning of the chapter. The quote I have at the beginning of this one is from it's military training from a group called SIAC Tactical Group, and you know their tagline is "There are no victims, there are only volunteers," and it is brutal and it is rough. But I've been waiting for someone to read my book and then like call me out for victim shaming, because I use that quote in the book. You gotta look a little bit deeper and kind of think through their mindset and kind of why they're sharing that slogan with you. You know, it's about taking responsibility for your actions, and you know, regardless of how bad a situation is, you typically always have a little bit of control where you can actually change the outcome. You know, and it is never easy, right? Like never making a change in your life, you know, whether it's some sort of personal relationship or financial or whatever it may be, right? Like it's never an easy choice, but there's typically always a way to influence how things are going to turn out. You know, and it's the difference between, you know, letting life control you and taking control of your life.
Yeah,
and
the kind of person who's going to make excuses, then I mean, like all you're going to get are negative outcomes.
Yeah. A lot of that, you know, I think I kind of live a lot of my mindset in my life through that, and kind of the military has instilled a lot of that in me. And yeah, sometimes we make really good choices, sometimes not so much. But either way, you know, we made the choice, and you got to deal with the outcome. So it's kind of where I was driving home the point at the end of the book there.
Take control of what you can.
Yeah.
You only get one chance. You only get one life.
That's right.
Something about Mama Spaghetti, I think, was probably in there somewhere.
My sweater. Yeah, I got you. I got you.
Well, Evan, I think you got to sign off at this point, unless you got something else to say. Unless you're done talking about yourself, talking about your own life.
Talking about myself, yeah. Yeah, so I think I just kind of wanted to end the book with a note of that people have a choice in their decisions, and you can affect where your life's going next, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be planning to run 12, 24, 48 hours. You know, it's just whatever you want to do. You know, I think the option's always there, and like we've mentioned several times over this recording, you know, a lot of it's about consistency and persistence, and the saying the appearance of success is often those that just didn't give up. So I think that's I've just seen that so many more times than I can possibly count over the last 20 years of military and competitive racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Take ownership for your own life and your own success and your own goals
and your own failures.
Don't pin it on anyone else, and your own failures.
Yeah, you gotta take it.
Learn from them.
You gotta take it. Yeah, exactly. You gotta learn from your failures, right? Like we point blame sometimes in the military, but the idea is that like you point blame so you can figure out how I can avoid doing something similar, negative in the future.
That's a good moral, man.
Deep warrior philosopher, right?
Deep.
Or something like athlete philosopher. I don't know what you were saying last time.
I can't remember. But it was really good, and whatever it was, attribute it to me later on.
Got it. Will do.
Dude, this has been fun. I've had a blast talking with you about this book. This was a big deal for me. This has been like a part of my journey, not just as like an amateur athlete, but also as a just as a human being. Like from the time that we did OCR America 2, and we kind of got to know one another. We'd already known each other a little bit before, but I hadn't got to spend that much time around you, and just like those long hours, just like kind of running and kind of picking your brain and just honestly kind of suffering a little bit and watching you suffer has changed my perception of how I want to live my life and allowed me to kind of like be a little bit more bold with taking control of my goals. And thanks, dude.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, it's been great. Like I said, having you come along for OCR America 2 was one of the best ideas I've ever had, right? Like hiring you to come along for the journey not only helped us raise a lot more money, right? That was our biggest fundraiser we've ever done, but it also made it easier for me to continue to do well every day, right? Because, the cameras there giving me that like observer effect, peer pressure. And then every morning I wake up and you show me this awesome video of what I did the day before. And it just blunts all the pain, right? Like, I spent the previous day suffering atypically a lot. And then you show me this like 3-minute video of, in my opinion, of like me looking awesome. And I'm like, yeah, I am awesome. That is a good thing, And I could watch that video and like, it projects like an ideal version of myself back to myself, allowing me to continue to, like self-fulfilling prophecy type of thing, and allow me to continue to perform. So it was great. And then on top of that, like we've talked about over the last couple episodes, me and you I just get along with you really well. It was great.
We partied, man. We partied the whole time.
We did, yeah. And we got a lot more adventures coming, so continue to follow along. Continue to follow
OCR America 3.
We're not doing OCR
2022.
No. I've got other ideas.
I'm going to point back to this podcast right now. At this point in time, whenever we do OCR America 3,
we're not doing OCR America 3.
I was right.
It might look a little bit like OCR America, but it's not. It's not. So
it's better.
Yeah, I would say better. It's different.
We'll be older.
We'll be older and more surly. That's the plan.
Yeah, it will definitely be a lot grumpier in the videos, crotchety even.
Yeah. So thanks for listening. Thanks, Bobby, for coming along and on this journey and sharing some of your insights. And what do you got coming up?
Normal stuff, man. I've got this new YouTube channel, which doesn't have a name because you guys haven't subscribed yet. When you do, you can. I'm talking about all the things that I love. Mostly filmmaking, animation, and horror movies. So if you're into the creepy side of pop culture and you enjoy seeing a really eccentric person figure out what's fun and interesting about horror and why it matters, and just kind of see what we can create that can make the world a better place through the lens of this oft maligned genre, you can check me out on YouTube and at bobbyross.film, where I will be.
Cool.
It's new.
Yes. I tried to go to it the other day and it wouldn't let me access it. I'm excited to go.
Yeah, that's actually because it's a placeholder at the moment.
Yeah. I figured that out.
I'm hoping that all this I've gone to a lot of effort over the past couple of years to get all of my social media stuff to line up at Bobby Ross Film and bobbyross.film, and it's only just now happening. This has been over a year, people. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm excited to go check it out once it finally goes live, and you'll stick around for Strength and Speed. We're going to bring Bobby back on for a couple other episodes. I got some other guests lined up that I want his input on that I think will be interesting for the kind of.
I will judge people with you. I'll judge him hard
for the future of kind of where OCR is going, especially on like the media side and some other stuff. So stick around. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we had fun running our mouths, and we'll catch you guys later.
Thanks for coming on my podcast, Evan.
You're welcome.